U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has arrived in Italy's Capri island for a key meeting on Wednesday as the group mulls imposing sanctions on Iran after its attack on Israel on Saturday. The meeting is bringing together the foreign ministers of the U.S., Italy, Canada, France, Germany, Japan, the UK and the European Union. Germany has said that the delegates will also discuss support for a Ukrainian air defense system in its conflict with Russia. DD India's Giles Gibson is now with us. He joins us live from Capri for more on this story. Giles, is the G7 in one voice regarding sanctioning Iran for its attack on Israel?
Well, at this stage, we are still waiting to see exactly what sort of action the G7 are going to take in terms of trying to get Israel and Iran to de-escalate in terms of tensions that have been building, of course, with those drone and missile strikes that Tehran launched against Israeli territory over the course of the weekend. We are coming up to, in about an hour's time or so, the moment when Antonio Tajani, the Italian foreign minister, will welcome the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, the British Foreign Secretary David Cameron, Lord Cameron, and his other G7 counterparts at that hotel that you can see just behind me. And we are also seeing signs that we are getting closer and closer to the start of these talks in terms of helicopters buzzing overhead and security personnel patrolling the roof of that hotel just over my left shoulder. Of course, the Italian G7 presidency have been building the agenda for this meeting for some time now, but clearly events around the world, especially in the Middle East, are really going to really change the agenda in terms of what's right at the top of it. We expect the situation in the Middle East, not just tensions between Israel and Iran, but also the situation in Gaza, as well as the Red Sea, to really dominate these talks over the next couple of days or so.
All right. Giles, are concerns about China helping Russia build up its military strength also expected to be discussed?
Yeah, there is a very busy agenda for the G7 foreign ministers, as well as those talks on the Middle East. We're going to see them discussing Ukraine and possible ways to support Ukraine using $300 billion worth of frozen Russian assets in the West. They're also going to be discussing stability in the Indo-Pacific, which will certainly include discussions around China and tensions on the Taiwan Strait. They're also keen, the Italian presidency, to have some talks around how the G7 can engage better with the continent of Africa. And there are also some topics that really the G7 presidency, Italy, the holder of that, have really been trying to push to the top of this agenda, things like global governance that could be introduced in terms of the risks and opportunities that are presented by artificial intelligence or AI. But as ever with these meetings, you can sort of set the agenda weeks or months before, and then global events really sort of change exactly what these foreign ministers will be talking about. And so the Middle East really set to dominate much of their discussions.
Giles Gibson in Capri, Italy, thank you for joining. Now, coming back to the Israel-Hamas conflict, Qatar has said that talks on a ceasefire in Gaza and release of hostages are at a delicate phase. Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani said that mediators were trying to address a stumbling block. Qatar, along with Egypt, is mediating talks to halt fighting between Israel and Hamas.
The negotiations are between moving forward and stumbling. During this time, we are passing through a delicate phase with some stumbling, and we are trying as much as possible to resist this stumbling block and to move forward to put an end to this suffering that the Palestinian people are passing through in Gaza, as well as to retrieve the hostages.
As tensions with West Asia reach a tipping point, Israel's war cabinet is expected to meet again on Wednesday to decide on a response to the Iranian attack. Meanwhile, Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi warned of a severe and heavy response to any Israeli attack violating Iranian territorial integrity and harming its national interests.
If the Zionist regime makes the slightest move to violate our territory and harm the national interest of the Islamic Republic, they must understand that they will face a severe and heavy response. The plan of action for True Promise was a limited operation. It was not a comprehensive and extensive plan. Had it been much larger action, then the supporters of Zionist regime would have seen that nothing would have remained of the Zionist regime. But it was decided to carry out a limited operation and deliver punishment to the Zionist regime.
Now, Washington and its allies hope that new economic sanctions against Iran will help persuade Israel to limit the scope of its retaliation. My colleague Caroline Malone is in Washington, D.C. She takes it forward from me here and gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Caroline, global diplomacy at test here to resolve conflicts?
Well, that's right. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has thanked his visiting foreign ministers of Germany and the UK for their support. However, he's reiterated that Israel would make its own decisions regarding its security. And Netanyahu has stressed that Israel will do everything necessary to defend itself against Iran.
I
am coming now from meetings with the foreign ministers of Great Britain and Germany. Last night I spoke to British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and soon I will also speak to other leaders. I thank our friends for their support in the defense of Israel, and I say this both support in words and support in actions. They also have all kinds of suggestions and advice. I appreciate it. But I also want to make it clear. We will make our own decisions, and the state of Israel will do everything necessary to defend itself.
Well, after meeting Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu in Jerusalem, the German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock said that the Middle East must not be allowed to slide into a situation whose outcome is completely unpredictable. Baerbock was visiting Israel for the 7th time since the Hamas attack on October 7th to aid in efforts to de-escalate tension in the region.
The region
must not step by step slide into a situation with a totally unpredictable outcome. Everyone must now act prudently and responsibly. I'm not talking about giving in. I'm talking about a wise restraint, which is nothing less than strength, because Israel, with its defensive victory, already showed strength last weekend.
Denn Stärke hat Israel mit seinem Defensivsieg am Wochenende schon gezeigt.
Well, the UK Foreign Secretary David Cameron highlighted a united front for Israel after Iran launched a barrage of drones and missiles on Israel last weekend in retaliation for a Damascus consular annex attack on April 1st. Well, Cameron has said he was in Israel to show solidarity with the nation.
The situation is very concerning. It's right to show solidarity with Israel. It's right to have made our views clear about what should happen next, but it's clear the Israelis are making a decision to act. We hope they do so in a way that does as little to escalate this as possible, and in a way that, as I said yesterday, is smart as well as tough. But the real need is to refocus back on Hamas, back on the hostages, back on getting the aid in, back on getting a pause in the conflict in Gaza. It's right to be here in Israel today to show solidarity after that appalling attack by Iran.
Well, DD India's Sarah Coates sent us this report on David Cameron's latest visit to Israel.
Sources close to the Security Cabinet, also the War Cabinet, they say that the Israelis will be delivering a powerful, a strategic blow to Iran. And really the only thing that they haven't decided upon yet is when this should happen. Now, there really is broad consensus here in Israel that there must be a significant response given this unprecedented attack that saw some 300 missiles and drones launched into Israel. But what we do need to remember here, Ollie, is that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he is under significant pressure really to make sure any kind of response doesn't cause a wider regional spillover. But he's also under a lot of pressure here domestically, especially from people who keep him in power, like the far right-wing coalition, which do sit on his security cabinet. We're talking here Bezalel Smotrich and also Itamar Ben-Gvir. They are calling on the Israeli Prime Minister, on the Israeli security establishment to hit Iran with everything it has. So certainly an extremely delicate, worrying situation.